And he said, I can like adjust it, but you really would benefit from seeing a pelvic floor therapist just to have that internal check and to then also just check that, your muscles are good and just everything down there is good to give birth. And that was how I was referred to you. So this tailbone was the greatest gift because I really feel like from our first session, I was like, where was this woman?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pelvic Pulse podcast. We have yet again a special guest with us today. My friend, my client, Jessica Grody. Thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your story, your birth story, your just entire journey through this year in postpartum. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this space?
Yeah. Well, I'm honored to be here to share. I became a new mom at 38 and never really thought I would be a mom or was attached to being a mom. So it's just been such an interesting opening for me to experience this. And then my son Oliver is about to be 1 next week. So yes, we're about a year postpartum, and what a journey it's been. I'm grateful to share because I've learned so much, and I feel like anything I can share that can help a pregnant or a postpartum woman or a woman in general going through whatever she's going through is just a gift that we get to give. So,
Absolutely. I feel like every woman that I've worked with has so much embodied experience and wisdom that they've gleaned from that. And I mean, something that stands out about you right away is the fact that you were someone who sought like pelvic care before you gave birth. Why don't you share about, okay, do you want to kind of go back a little bit?
I'd love to.
Into, yeah, like
Yes.
the pregnancy journey, maybe even getting pregnant, all of that.
Well, and I was trying to remember how I got connected with you and
Yeah.
why I decided to do pelvic floor therapy before giving birth. And I remembered. So I was a gymnast my entire life. And when I was 12, I broke my tailbone, coccyx completely off. And it never healed back properly. And I had heard a story from a friend who had given birth that her tailbone was tilted and that actually impeded the baby's progression down. So I remember I was at the chiropractor because some mom had told me go to the chiropractor. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the chiropractor. You just take these little bits of wisdom that you hear and you're like, that sounds like a good idea. And so I'm asking him about my tailbone. And he said, I can like adjust it, but you really would benefit from seeing a pelvic floor therapist just to have that internal check and to then also just check that, your muscles are good and just everything down there is good to give birth. And that was how I was referred to you. So this tailbone was the greatest gift because I really feel like from our first session, I was like, where was this woman? Like, it was game changer for me going into my birth, which, I had a lot of trepidation around. Honestly, that was part of why I was never attached to having children, is I had a large fear of giving birth. I had had, some really vivid dreams where I had died during childbirth. And so
Mm.
just moving through all of that was a lot for me. And I feel like our sessions really helped me feel comfortable that my body was capable. And you really helped me move through a lot of the emotional stuckness that I had in my pelvic floor around the whole process. So, that tailbone injury, whatever, 30 some years ago, was just such a gift.
Like it's an initiation, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's when if you can look at, say, an injury or some kind of, experience like with gratitude. I mean,
Hmm.
hopefully that's where you end up and land, but during the time where maybe you're going through the like nitty-gritty healing, it doesn't feel so great. It's rough. It can totally affect your life. And then when
Hmm.
you kind of find the appreciation in it after X amount of years,
Yeah, 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 totally.
Oh, I'm so glad you landed in this space with me.
Yes, and I just like if anything can be taken away from our conversation, I think for women who are pregnant,
Mm.
considering pelvic floor work before giving birth, because I think it's something that some women hear about and consider for postpartum, but I don't think it's something they consider before giving birth. And I mean, you remember I wasn't even breathing properly, me, this, tenured yoga teacher for the birth process.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things I just thought of there was even just the other day I met a new woman. She I found out is pregnant, and someone told her that I was a pelvic physical therapist, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll check out your stuff as soon as I'm postpartum." And I'm like, "Hold on."
No, don't
Like,
wait.
you don't have to wait. And she's actually
Yeah.
someone who has endometriosis as well. So I think that's even more of a reason to potentially see a pelvic physical therapist beforehand. And like you said, with being a yoga instructor and like, yeah, we learn a lot of pranayama, you learn a lot of different breathing techniques.
Hmm.
And we were talking about it in another session where there's a lot of guidance for, a root lock, belly button lock. So all the bandhas, Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha, that's cued quite often.
Hmm.
And the cue that's missing is the release and
Pull
the
the
letting
grape up.
go.
What do you do with the grape then?
Yeah. Is the grape coming out?
Yeah.
It's so true.
Totally.
It's so
Yeah.
true. It was starting when I first got into pelvic PT, it was getting to be such a pet peeve for me if teachers were teaching that and then
Mm,
not cueing the letdown. And of
yeah.
course, I wouldn't say anything because,
Yeah.
you know, uh, unsolicited advice isn't always taken well in my experience. So yeah, it's been such a gift to be able to work with you. And then there's probably a handful of other women that I feel so blessed to have worked with them in the phase of their life where they're getting off birth control
Mm,
and they're recalibrating to their body and um, they are preparing energetically, physically for conception and pregnancy. And then I get to work with them in that
yeah.
pregnant phase, like I did with you. And oh my gosh, it is quite interesting how women actually don't know how to breathe with their pelvic floor.
And I also feel like having an initial check while you're pregnant, because I didn't know if my pelvic floor was tight or loose, or because I think you shared the symptoms are really similar with either one. And as a runner, I jump rope all the time, like it would be easy for me to say, oh, I'm so physically fit to give birth. But I've heard that a lot of women who do a lot of cardio have really tight pelvic floor, and the birthing process is really difficult. So to even have you check, what's going on down there, and you to say like, hey, maybe don't do those 300 Kegels a day because you don't need to be. But I'm reading these books that are saying like, do Kegels every time you're at a stop sign, and because that's how you're going to give birth. I'm like, no.
No, actually the total opposite. Yeah, no, it's the runners, it's the weightlifters, it's
Mm,
even the yoga instructors because of that cueing that they hear so
mm,
often. It's even the dancers. Like
yeah.
all of my, you can think of yogis and dancers as really flexible and gymnasts as well, right? You're strong and flexible.
Hmm.
And maybe though not in your pelvic floor. I think the pelvic
Yes.
floor tightness is kind of it is a general like collective issue amongst women, I believe, these
Hmm.
days, especially in
Hmm.
the past 4 years, global things happening and a lot of stress just ends up manifesting in the pelvic floor. And women
Yes.
are
Yes.
these like stress shock absorbers.
Yes.
So it is manifesting in our pelvic floors. And I think right now is a beautiful time in the world where women are starting to realize, like, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I am. I might feel this like weakness sensation, whether
Yeah.
that's heaviness or leaking, even like, I mean, prolapse probably not before giving birth, but definitely leaking and things like that happening beforehand. And they're waking up to it, that there's something going on here, and the weakness
You
can
don't have to live
coincide.
with that.
Right.
You
Oh
know, you
my,
hear, oh yeah, everyone pees a little when they run or jump or no,
yeah.
you shared with me like that doesn't have to be the case. It shouldn't be the case.
No, 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 no. There is a solve, I promise.
And when you first exposed me to just like the photos and the intricacies of the pelvic floor and how it's all connected, like even to the jaw, like we're so unaware. It's not something we ever learn about, in our yoga teacher training anatomy or in, anatomy in high school and college. Like, but it's this huge, vast network of muscles. And then if you're going into giving birth to a baby and you're not even aware of these muscles and these connections, it's like you're kind of setting yourself up for having more struggle than you need. And it can be such a beautiful process if
Yeah.
you allow it to be,
Would you mind sharing a little bit about your personal experience
Yeah.
with birth and how that actually went for you?
I'd love to. And I mean, honestly, like I said, thanks in huge part to our sessions. He came on his due date. I was able to give birth naturally with no medication. And I labored at home for, the first like 12 hours. And through the breath work that we did and the connections that I knew of like softening the jaw, um, I was able to just manage the contractions. And then we went to the hospital and about 12 hours later, he was born, and it obviously wasn't without its intricacies and its, you know, painful moments, but it
Mm.
was beautiful. And I really do think that if I hadn't learned how to properly breathe through the contractions and in the pushing, I wouldn't have had such a beautiful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you sharing that every birth it can be beautiful, and everyone has their own story with it. But I remember specifically with you seeing you a few days or like a
Yes,
week
you were one of
postpartum.
my first texts. Come over, check me out, help me.
Oh my gosh. I love those sessions. They are so sacred and so special and just yummy and cozy for
Mm.
me. And even though, you're healing and you're recalibrating to this big old experience, I do remember you saying that you were were you the only one that gave birth vaginally on that floor of the hospital that day?
There were 8 births that day. I was the only vaginal birth in the entire hospital.
Wow.
And that's a whole other conversation, I think. But I do believe that a lot of it was because you had helped me know how to breathe, to push, how to breathe, to move through the contractions. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, cesarean rates are high, and who knows what those circumstances were for those other women.
Hmm. Yes.
But yeah, I love that you just shared that connection really it did allow you for that vaginal birth to happen quite beautifully. And like you said, not without its like quote unquote painful
I had
moments.
some tears, I had some things that just weren't ideal, but I birthed a healthy baby and
Mhm.
you can't ask for more than that.
I mean, yeah, it's like a yes and. Yes, I tore, and yes, I have a healthy baby. And yes, it was a very beautiful birth.
Hmm. And I think too, reaching out to you after giving birth because another part of it is those first few weeks of recovery. And I think I knew that they were critical. And I also knew that I didn't have all the answers on how to protect myself as I moved into each phase of postpartum. You know what I mean? Like I'm very in tune with my body, but pregnancy and giving birth is just a whole new game that I'd never been through. So I really wanted to have you come check on me and help me understand, okay, in these first few weeks, like roll over. Don't try to sit straight up. Like anything I could do to set myself up for success moving into each period of postpartum. I was like, this is important.
Yeah, and that isn't talked enough about either.
Hmm.
I mean, I would love, maybe you can we can jog each other's memories a little bit with what that was like so early on. Um, because I mean, I love this about you. I love that you were just wanting to get back to your routines and the things that helped you relieve stress, like running, like
Hmm.
swimming. But also the other thing I really love about you is that you were able to take these modifications in stride and you, yes, felt your ego say, like, I need to do this, I want to do this. And you also honored your body if you went a little too far one time.
Yes. And I've been thinking a lot about this too. And we talked about this the other day. That, and I had a reframe come up this morning while I was running, actually,
Love.
versus instead of considering things to always be like recovery, it's almost a discovery. It's like a rediscovery. Like every time you rediscover a new movement pattern or rediscover something that your body had done, took a break from, it's it's this like it can be this really magical process if you let it be, if you allow the ego to sit aside and see that you're progressing, and the body loves that. Like
Mm,
for me at least, when I'm plateauing and I'm doing the same thing every day, my body's kind of like, okay, we're gonna stay where we're at and this is fine. But when you're progressing and you're starting almost, from scratch, your body loves that like process of, okay, today I'm gonna add 2 minutes to my run. Tomorrow I'm gonna add 2 more minutes. Your body actually gets more efficient, leaner, stronger. And we talked about this too. It's kind of like watching your child. Like I remember when Oliver took his first 3 steps, and then a couple days later, it's like 5 steps. And then it's like now he's running around the house. But that process, if we can, as adults, like not try to skip the steps, like enjoy the process,
mm.
it can be just so amazing.
Absolutely. That process of postpartum, especially in those first, let's just call it year,
Yeah.
your progression can absolutely mirror your baby's.
Yes.
Like, start crawling on the floor.
Yes. Totally.
And
And
I mean,
the first few weeks you lay in bed. And I'm so grateful I gave myself that gift. And to your point, my ego came up so many times when I was like seeing these other new moms doing hot yoga classes and whatever else they were doing. But I just knew for myself that long term, like what was it, at 4 months postpartum, I think I was running for an hour again. Like,
yeah.
and it took a patience to take those first few weeks in bed and to know that like, okay, if I can just allow myself to rest, to recover, then I can move into that rediscovery
Mm,
and I'll be back on track in no time?
exactly. You're doing it for the longevity
Yes.
of your body and the love that you
Yes.
have for running. Yeah, like, would you want to just do it now for a quickly short time, or would you want to
No.
just be able to run for the rest of your life if you can take this one pause?
And then 20 years from now, maybe be dealing with prolapse or dealing with,
Right.
having surgeries. And because I have an aunt who had surgery recently
Mm.
from childbirth, but she had bladder prolapse, and it becomes a bigger deal if you don't take care of it in the beginning. I mean, you know this obviously better than
No,
anyone.
but preach, preach, you know? I think it's helpful to hear these stories, especially about these, older women. I'm not sure how many older women actually listen to this podcast, but I would be hard set on sending it out to some people.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's never too late to start the
No.
work that you do, I think is another lesson. Like whether you're, 8 months pregnant or 8 months postpartum, 8 years postpartum, like
Hmm.
from conversations we've had, like you've helped people repair diastasis years later. Like it's not a forever diagnosis just because something happened, you know?
Yeah, it's not game over at any point. Like,
Exactly.
of course, as a provider, I'd love to see people beforehand early on, and then as soon as you can or as soon as you're comfortable, then that's your time. That's your journey. I mean,
Mm,
I have a client who is also postpartum. She talks about her mom who has leaking and tailbone pain,
mm.
and has had that since her sister was born, and that's been 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's
But
like,
if we don't know any better or know,
right.
so this was a friend of mine, I was talking to her the other day, and she shared her husband is from France. Did
Mm,
you know that in France, pelvic floor PT is part of the protocol after you give birth? It's just compulsory. You just do it.
yeah, that's all over Europe. That's even in Canada. It's built into their postpartum care. Yes. Yes.
And here I feel like you have to really like pull.
Hmm.
And then often I've heard stories where women are told like, "Oh, I have an appointment for you in 3 months." Like, it's not something that doctors share or offer, or you have to like seek it out.
Yeah. So I was just in my Instagram posts, like responding to someone's comment, and it was a comment on another episode where, we were talking about diagnoses and what happens with that and how to kind of mindset shift around it a
Mm,
little bit so that you don't identify with it too much. But there are times, right, where a doctor will say, check you out, give you a diagnosis, and they don't necessarily support you with anything.
resources.
No
Yeah.
resources, no guidance. What are you supposed to do? I mean, this is a flaw in our medical system, I believe, where I mean, I know personally, I know providers who are so on top of it, like
Yes.
clients that are
Yes.
providers that are
Yeah.
so on top of it, and they do a brilliant job because they have lived experience and they have this background of seeing a bunch of patients, and they're so great. And just like there can be good PTs, bad PTs, good yoga teachers, bad yoga teachers, you know what I mean? It's there in the providership and, medical offices and hospitals as well.
Yeah.
And, the say, for example, too, the 6 week checkup where you're cleared to do all the things that you were doing before you gave birth is so redonkulous to me. And it is unfortunate that we kind of have to advocate for ourselves, but I'd rather advocate for myself and find power in
Yes.
finding the resources than, take on maybe a victim mentality like, oh, poor me,
Yes.
I'm stuck with this for
Yes.
the rest of my life. I'm not going to roll over like that personally, but I know that that can get really exhausting if you don't know what to do.
And I think it is, and I loved my providers. I love my OB, my midwives. I think it's just a lack of awareness, and they see so many patients,
Yeah.
and I think it's like, this podcast and me sharing with friends and mothers that I know, like just the more we can make women aware, the better it's going to be. And because, we don't live in Europe, that can be the gold standard, but
Hmm.
I think there's other avenues, and I think it's just about awareness and about sharing that it's something that is important and
Hmm.
helpful and beneficial. And the more women we can reach, the more, goodness we can have. And I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, I think it was my chiropractor and my doula who connected me with you. And I wouldn't have even known doulas existed, except a friend of mine was like, we got a doula. And I'm like, what is this? It's like we just have to keep talking and keep sharing. And I think something that just came to me too is that um, I think a lot of people shy away from talking about the postpartum period
Hmm.
of health and what the woman is going through, because it's all about the baby, and the baby's born, the baby's healthy, so yay. But the moms maybe don't share as much because the focus is just so much on the baby, and it's like, how are you feeling? I have this resource who might be able to support you to optimize your health, to optimize your healing. And I think more conversations about that, just like privileging that, is huge.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot to say with that. Because postpartum care, again, just isn't in a place where I would want it to be for every single woman out there. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, I think there's a huge piece of awareness that's lacking for women themselves and for
Yes.
all of
Yes.
society.
Yes.
So yes, naming that is huge. And yeah, like the centralizing of the baby is important. Like the mother baby connection is so important. If there's a partner involved, that partner baby connection is important. The mothering of the mother, I think, is it needs to be foundational.
Mhm. And we
And
talked about this in our last session. I think it's prioritization. And I think considering, okay, if I don't take my postpartum health and healing seriously, I may not be able to hold my baby when my baby is 30 pounds, or I may be dealing with issues in a few years that are going to impact my ability to take care of my child instead of considering, okay, just had a major physical event happen. Let's get the resources now to make sure I'm set up for success.
yeah.
And that's what I really felt like we did was, I made a weekly appointment for those first months of postpartum, and it was really a check-in. Like I would try a little bit, you'd kind of check me, we'd kind of talk and figure out like, okay, what's the best progression and the exercises you gave me that I still do to this day, 11 months postpartum have been so key in my ability to own my healing,
Mm,
and own my recovery, my discovery. But had we not had those constant like checks, I wouldn't have been able to progress the way I did.
right. I think the regular and regular could be every other week for some people, right? Could be monthly.
Yeah.
Everyone's a little different.
Yeah.
I love the weekly because it feels like you could take these tweaks on a lot sooner and you could potentially not say have like a plateau for a little bit
Hmm.
longer.
Hmm.
You just like segmentally, I mean,
Yes.
obviously the healing journey again isn't linear.
Yes.
The
Yes. Yes.
rediscovery is not linear
Yep.
all the
Yep.
time. Sometimes we do overdo it and it's
Yes.
okay. It's okay. Right? It's just a learning game right there.
Even
Um,
having you available as a resource, I would text you every so often saying, hey, I'm feeling a little heaviness. I just went for a long run. Like, what should I do? When can I see you again? Like, just having the ability to kind of check myself that way too is just so amazing and beneficial and
yeah,
key.
absolutely. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you were able to utilize that. And yeah, some of these resources, I mean, I put out there for people. So FYI, if you're listening and you're like, what
Yes.
are these little exercises and resources? Go check out Held. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yes.
I have a
Do all
mini
the breathwork
version.
exercises.
Yes, the mini version is for free. The long extended version of like 20 videos is for the clients. And I feel
Worth
like
it.
that, yeah, absolutely worth it, right?
Hmm.
It was fun to make that because I feel like those are the things that I are basic, quote unquote,
Hmm.
foundational again.
Yes. Yes. Back to
And
basics. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's what you have to build upon, right?
Hmm.
And you did such a beautiful job of taking those on and incorporating them into your life because that's how people actually do feel the healing and the rediscovery and more of the empowered. Okay, this is what I'll say actually about what I'm personally thinking about and um just inquiring and looking at and feeling into people's journeys with postpartum. uh I believe that there's a version of postpartum where it can feel so rich and nourishing and juicy, and you're embodying mother and a version of yourself that could be new, could be uncovered, right?
Yes.
And it feels exciting versus maybe some of these narratives about postpartum being really kind of
Struggle.
a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I I know it's difficult just from what my clients tell me. It can be difficult and yes, very worthwhile. And it can be so beautiful. And I feel like you've been exemplary of that for me.
Mhm. And it hasn't been without its moments, 100%. And I'll just share, eh, privileging these conversations. I have had some postpartum depression for sure, which
Yeah.
is another component. So I feel like having the resources to ensure that my physical body is healthy and progressing is key, at least for me, in my mental health. And there's just so much going on with hormones that, like, even if you have that piece, sometimes there are moments which I definitely experienced. But I know in one of our sessions, you did some craniosacral with me and really helped me move through some of the emotional pieces that I was working with. So, you know,
Mhm.
you're a multi-talented, diverse modality practitioner. And in that moment, that's what I needed.
Mhm.
And I think it's just being willing to get the care and receive the care that you need to move through. And I imagine, I'm 11 months postpartum, but I imagine postpartum lasts, a
It's
while. So
forever, baby. It's
yeah.
forever after you give birth.
And like you said, I we didn't see each other for like a little bit, and I'm back to seeing you every so often because I just realized I really want to continue these check-ins, and I want to be, 1,000% at some point on my journey. But I just think it's really important to honor and acknowledge that receiving care for the mama is just so important. It's so important.
I mean, this is why I love serving moms. I really do believe that you are a cornerstone of our society. We wouldn't have society without moms.
Mhm.
And if our society started switching maybe to more of a maybe mom-centric model, I think a lot of things would change. If women's, you know, if they're caretaking, the domestic care, the planning, like if all of that was truly valued and shared amongst a
Mhm.
village even of friends, of family, of providers, whoever you can really get on your team, I feel like the world literally would shift
Yes,
for the
yes,
better.
absolutely.
Because when women also and women in general, if they can feel embodied and supported and loved and nourished, good good shit comes out of women, you know? Whether that's a baby or a
Yes,
business or an
yes.
idea, it's just women are incredible and I love serving them. I love serving you.
And you just made me think of something too. I feel like the work you do is so focused on these centers that are our identity and our
Mhm.
safety. And I think there's just so much intertwined in that. And being pregnant and giving birth, it shakes up, it rocks this navel center and this root center, which is again our sense of self and our safety. And so I think in seeing you and having a regular practice of pelvic floor PT, it really helped me integrate all of that
Mm.
and really helped me like reshape my sense of self as I am entering into this new phase as a mom,
Mhm.
the who am I now? And it's just all so integrated, the physical, the emotional, the identity. So I think that the work you do not only helps to ensure the physical body is healthy, but it really helps new moms, women feel a sense of self and a sense of purpose and a sense of pride in being a woman. And
Mm,
especially if you have any, history of sexual trauma, abuse, feeling unworthy in that way, it's all so intertwined.
absolutely. Thank you for naming that and sharing that. Um, in my vaginal alchemy course, or, it's a group experience. We just finished it yesterday at this time of this
Woo!
recording. And it was so beautiful. And it was so funny. One of the
Mm,
gals was mentioning that. because I had talked about how pussy work can actually be a lot of, inner child work or younger versions of you
Mm,
work. And it can be very um, awakening and initiating and poking, at those parts of you. And yeah, it can be and it can be deep work and really integrative for all those pieces. And like you said, basically just the lower three chakras, the first
mm,
three, your root, your sacral, your solar plexus,
yep.
those are the energies I'm working with 100%. Those are the physical spaces that we're working with 100%.
Yeah. There's no denying that one.
Right? I mean, that's why,
Yeah.
God, there's so many layers to that. And oh my goodness. I mean, just even thinking about the womb and the sacral energy and that creation life force energy that is sexual energy. And I mean, recalibrating to all of that, even going through pregnancy to postpartum, rediscovering,
Absolutely.
like you said, yeah, the physical things that you're able to do now and what your body can maybe come back to and learn
Mhm.
again. It's the same thing with sex.
Yes. Yes.
It's all there. It's all, ooh, so good.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, not always easy, but like you said, I love serving people, and you know this because you just said it, but I love serving people and meeting them where they're at. So if that one day, they're not really they don't have the energy for the physical stuff. It's just they want care, they want hands-on, maybe not even hands-in,
Hmm.
and we're just feeling into what's happening in that moment, what the body's actually asking for,
Hmm.
what your energy has space for, what needs to be expressed.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. It's so fun. It's so good. It really is. Okay, so I guess talk me through, or if you want to share, yeah, about where you're at right now in 11 months, almost one whole year.
Hmm.
Maybe you have some last bits of reflection on your journey, your path from maiden to
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, gosh, all I can say is becoming a mother has been the greatest gift that I didn't even know was possible.
Mm,
It's really, really helped me to rediscover again my body, how I like to move, and just who I want to be moving forward. I changed my name, I had a baby, and I left my corporate job of 17 years all within a few months. So to say that my sense of identity was shaken up is a
yeah.
an understatement. But
Yeah.
yes. But again, I'm so grateful to have connected with you and to have had the opportunity to experience pelvic floor PT. And I think something I'm going to do forever because I do feel like as a woman, I want to continue to progress in not only my physical health, but also like my ability to please myself and my partner. And that's been another little gift that I didn't realize would come along with this pregnancy postpartum process. But
Yes.
like you just said, it's all so metaphorical, like rediscovering how I like to be pleased and then to take that into my partnership. Um, we didn't really touch on this, but I had a lot of shame and worthiness um, conditions around sex before I started seeing you. And that was kind of a byproduct of our sessions that I also got to work with that
Mhm.
while, you know, giving birth and healing and just like rediscovering all of this beauty that is down there, that is being a woman. So
Yes,
I
Jess.
really feel like um, the process of being pregnant, giving birth, and being able to work with you has really helped shape me into the woman I am right now in this moment and who I will be. And I just keep, like I was running this morning, and I just keep reminding myself that this rediscovery is so beautiful. And we just get to keep going. Like you said, it's not linear. There's definitely going to be setbacks, but just to continue to receive care and then to be able to care for others and share, like share my story, share the importance is just, it's inspiring.
You just gave me some chills
Oh,
that last time you said rediscovery, because it's just making me think of, you know, two words, curiosity,
mm,
being open to that, and expanding your capacity. Like motherhood is an initiation into expanding your capacity
yes.
for more love, for more expression, and yeah, just generally for more, right?
Yeah.
I don't know any person better at managing time than a mother.
You have to. You
Yeah.
you there's no other way.
Oh, but it's so, yeah, it's incredible to be a witness to that. And on top of that, right, it is, yeah, expanding your capacity for your pleasure. And maybe it is difficult to break some of those old belief systems around
Yeah.
worthiness or, yeah, what you are maybe for some people allowed to feel.
Hmm.
And then being able to share that with a partner, those discoveries is, oh my God, so cool and
Yeah.
just incredible.
Yeah.
It just feels really rich.
And I love, one of the things that I just love about the practice of yoga is I feel like every time you step onto your mat, it is a metaphor
Mm,
of life. And I just feel like everything we've talked about, if you can just continue to see and discover these metaphors, like watching your child and allowing that to be a, a mirror for you in your, progression, and letting the ego aside and watching their curiosity and watching, how they explore the world and allowing yourself to have that compassion and that experience in your sexual life, in your, fitness routine, in whatever aspect of your life you're looking at. Like, can we just witness these metaphors and know that whatever we're going through is okay, and there's a reason, and it's beautiful, versus our
mm,
ego telling us like, I need to look like that, I need to be there, why am I not measuring up? Like,
right. The comparison trap is
hmm,
not a fun one.
no. Compare
Um,
yourself to your baby. You're doing great.
exactly.
Like you said, start crawling. Get on all fours.
Crawl first before you walk, before
Yes.
you run,
Yes.
before
Yes.
you gallop and leap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So
love it.
fun.
It is so fun. And I think, like you said, with just having these conversations and bringing awareness to what's a real transition in postpartum looking like, and not just what's on the gram or,
Yes.
a celebrity who may have all these resources.
I
It's
mean,
like,
I think if I can be an advocate, prioritization, I would put pelvic floor PT at the top
yeah.
for postpartum, and honestly, for that third trimester of pregnancy. I think it is a top, should do. Yeah, I hate to should people, but
I know, right?
it should be a priority.
Yeah, it should be. I think if you want to have um not just like a beautiful birth or a pain-free, blissful birth, like whatever, but to
Yeah,
have
the
an
universe
embodied
is going to dictate
experience.
that, but yes,
Right,
yes,
right. Like your
yes,
lesson, it's gonna come to you.
yes,
However,
yes, yes. But set yourself up for success in whatever experience you're given. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a
And check out all
great.
your videos.
Thank you. Just plug,
Yes.
plug, plug.
Yes. Get yourself held.
Yes, get yourself some held.
Yes. So good.
Well, I am just so appreciative of you touching on
Likewise.
so many important pieces here to the journey, and just thankful for you saying yes again and embodying your fullest expression
Mhm.
of you as you are lighting the way for others.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Truly, truly grateful for you.
thank you. Yeah. Well, love you.
Love you.
And everyone listening, thank you so much for being here. If, I mean, I'm wondering, would people be, or are you open to people reaching out for questions?
1000%.
Okay. Okay. We'll put
Yes.
her information, Jess's information down in the show notes for anyone who's curious about her experience and for her resources. Again, thank you so much for listening, for being here. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.